Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hey, beautiful souls. I just wanted to take a quick moment before we dive into this episode to let you know that I am running into the Akasha again for round 3. I frigging love this course. It's everything that I wanted to talk about for so many years and kept all bottled up inside. And it just feels like pure electric channeling every time that I run it. So round 3 is starting on February 27th. And this is the last time I'm going to run it live because I'm having a baby, you guys. I'm pregnant and I'm having a baby in July. And so I'm moving towards, running some courses and then making them self-study. So it won't be the last time ever that you can ever access it. I don't want to put any scarcity fear in anybody's hearts, but it's going to be the last time that I run it live in the foreseeable future. So if you want to get in on the live energy, the group energy, fostering a sense of community, making connections with other people, and you want to be part of the infectious energy and ask questions in real time and get them answered, then join me in this round. It's going to be super fun. It's 7 modules. And I'm not sure if I'm going to do it deliver one module a week or what. I haven't figured that out. I'm just going to wait and see where everybody lives who signs up for the program so that we can try and figure out times that work best for the majority. But yeah, it's jam-packed full of goodness. You get to keep all the course materials, all the originally created program materials for life. If you can't attend the live module recording, no problem. The replay will be delivered to your inbox within 24 hours. And yeah, you get access to it forever as far as my technical skills allow. And what else is important to know? Basically, it's just 7 modules to expand your consciousness, raise your vibration, and show you how to access the Akashic records. This stuff totally changed my life, obviously, because this is what I do now. But more than that, even if I had never gone into reading the Akashic records for other people, this was by far the most healing modality for me that I have ever found. I absolutely love the Akashic records, and it is our birthright to access it. It's not something that I can do because I'm extra special, better than all of you. It's just something I put the time into learning how to do. And I'm really excited to show all of you who are called to it how easy it is to access it as well. So if you are interested in joining, then the link is in my bio on Instagram. I'll try and put a link in the show notes / my wonderful editor will try and put a link in the show notes, but it's a very long link. So we'll figure it out. Anyway, just send me a message somewhere and let me know that you would like to join, and I would be so happy to direct you to the enrollment process. Lots of love, everybody. Okay, let's get into our conversation with Ketsuban. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Third Eye Awakening. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Ketsuban, who is a 28-year-old carpenter from Oklahoma, and he's simply obsessed with staring reality in the face and figuring out what it really is. He reached out to me on Instagram, I think it was, after hearing me on a different podcast, and I knew right away that what his perspective is so interesting that I wanted to have a conversation with him here on the podcast. And he also has a podcast called The Wrong Warp, which I've checked out, and it's also very cool. So if you like what we talk about here today, then go check him out there. But hi, Ketsuban, welcome.
Hi, so great to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited to dig in. So everybody, this is our first time having a conversation. I think it's going to go into some interesting places. So Will you tell us a little bit about like how you got to have this perspective where you so what you shared with me on Instagram basically was in the messages we had is that you kind of like have this exploration of life as being a dream, being a collective dream. And I remember hearing in I think it's the latest episode of your podcast that you thought that maybe like the dream world is the real world and this is the dream. So what has brought you to that perspective?
So I remember being really, really young, for some reason, a lot of like nursery rhymes, but more particularly the Row Your Boat song. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. I heard this in like third grade, I think it was. And it was confusing. I was like, what do you mean life is but a dream? And then I would ask my parents, teachers, whoever, do you know about this song? Does this make sense to you? And everybody said it's just a song. Like, oh, it's just a fun, cute song. And I'm like, are you sure? And so that's something that I always kind of carried in the back of my mind as a kid. I mean, as a kid, it always felt, and I still feel this way, that what we're in right now is kind of hazy. It feels very dreamlike to me, and it always has. But, I sort of let society and program me, for lack of a better word, and I accepted that, oh, that doesn't make sense. I just got to go with the flow. And then when I turned, I think 19 years old, I think 2011, I tried psychedelics for the first time. And I've been doing psychedelics for 10 years. That's not something I recommend for everybody. That's not the answer to life. But I really enjoy psychedelics. Through psychedelics that's kind of where I realized, like, oh no, I am right. That feeling is a correct feeling, and that I should listen to myself and not listen to the rest of the external world tell me, hey, we're real. When I feel what's real, it feels natural. I think that everybody kind of has this feeling like they're looking for something their whole life. Through using a lot of the psychedelics, I realized, like, oh, it's just us. We're just looking for ourselves.
Totally. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's really, really, really all we're actually looking for. And even like I'm super interested and passionate about manifestation and like expanding the explanations and the understanding of how it works. But ultimately what I've come to is that like everything we're manifesting, everything we think that we desire to experience is it just gives us a new context to experience more of ourselves, and that's actually what we want. We want to uncover the truth of who we are, and so when we sort of get programmed by society, which I fully think is exactly what happens, it causes us to constantly be distracted and searching outside of ourselves, and always having that empty feeling and not quite being able to put your finger on it, like what it is that feels empty and missing. And then we don't, a lot of people don't find themselves because they don't know that's what they're actually looking for. But I totally agree with you. I think that's all it is.
Yeah, the idea that somebody could live a whole life, like they're born, they become programmed, whatever you want to call it, they grow up and they die. The idea that someone could live a whole life and never think about this type of stuff is crazy to me.
I know, I agree so much. And yet it's funny because in my real life with real physical people I interact with, I'd say that I have a couple of friends that sort of go here with me, but it's like not really all the way. And my husband does, which he wouldn't be my husband if he didn't. But nobody else, everybody just thinks I'm like crazy off in la la land. But I look at them and I'm like, there's so much. Like, how do you not want to explore this? I don't get it.
Yeah, and the more as time goes on, honestly, I don't know if you'd call it like isolated, but like, yeah, people think I'm crazy. They think I'm just completely insane, like people in my real life. And that it used to bother me, and I used to like really badly want to convince them. Like I felt like I had seen this thing. I'd seen this thing that changed my life, and I just want to show people. If you just listen to me for 5 seconds, I could show you. And I got to the point where I felt like I was killing myself trying to show everyone this thing. like a Chinese finger trap almost. The more I tried to show people, the more they thought I was crazy, the more isolated I became.
Yeah.
Maybe this year, last year, I don't know, timeline wise, but at some point I just let go of that and sort of realized like, no, I'm not the crazy one. You
And is
know?
that when you started doing your podcast, when you're just like,
Oh,
well, I want to talk about it, so I'm
it's
just going to
absolutely
talk
not.
about it?
When I first started my podcast, it was like it was just a thing to do. There was no real point. I wasn't even thinking about this stuff. Obviously I started the podcast a year or two ago. So it was like I'd taken psychedelics for 8 years at that point, and I felt all this stuff wholeheartedly. It just wasn't my jam at the time. When I started the podcast, I wanted to listen to music and talk to friends and just sort of have lighthearted fun. And I did for a really long time until probably 3 or 4 months ago when this reality stuff, for lack of a better word, was in my face every second. It was like before there would be constant little reminders all the time, like, oh yeah, this is a dream and everything's crazy. It's become in the past 3 or 4 months, like all the time. I wake up remembering, oh man, this is crazy. This is a crazy, beautiful experience we're having. This isn't just wake up and drink some coffee and do whatever you're supposed to do. Like every day that I wake up now, it's like, oh my God, like I'm leaping out of bed because I'm excited and happy. And I'm no longer trying to convince people. There's something like, sort of like I said, the Chinese finger trap. There's something about trying to convince people of this stuff that's not good. It's like, it's not what you're supposed to do. I've found
Mhm.
you're not
Mhm.
supposed to just say, no, come on, come on, come on. I'll show you. You got to see it. You learn that you have to sort of let everyone come to their own conclusions, because they'll come to the same conclusion for sure.
Yeah. Do you think it's free will? Do you think it's just like, because to me, free will is such a, it's like a sacrosanct law. Like it's a law. It can't be violated. Even though we impose ourselves on each other all the time, there's like huge consequences for it, massive ones. And so do you think it's just because everybody's on their own journey? And so when you're trying to like move somebody from where they are on their journey path, that it sort of like winds things up tighter and winds you up tighter? And do you think that's what it is?
So the idea that others are mirrors,
Hmm.
this idea, it's completely true. They are, but I don't know what other people are anymore. When I first got in, when I first got in the idea of everyone else's mirrors, it was like this weird thing of like, oh, okay, so am I the only person here just seeing myself reflected? And I've now, where I'm at now is I don't know. I don't know if we're all on separate journeys, or if there's like a center, like everyone's the center and they're just seeing reflections of themselves. It's a weird idea, but I mean, yeah, everyone is, they're on their own journey in their own way, but it's like it always circles back around where it's like the same journey. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, everyone is on their own journey, but at the same time, they are all just reflections of me.
That's true. And when you think about it that way, it's like the more that you knock on, like on somebody's like, skull and try to be like, look, just let me show you, just let me show you. If they're truly a reflection of you and they're reflecting an aspect back to you, then it's like you're trying to knock on a part of yourself and go through a door that isn't open rather than going through the door that is open, which is like a path of least resistance kind of thing. And it's sort of like going deeper inward. If the real prize is finding ourselves, then concerning ourselves with other people's perceptions is like a distraction from that.
Yeah, exactly. Distraction's a perfect word. A
Hmm.
perfect word. It's just to distract you, and then we legitimately have these thoughts of like, I just want to help this person. I
Hmm.
just want them to be happy and see what I see. But through my experience, it just seems like that's not what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to worry about other people's journey unless they come to you. People come to you with questions. Yeah, do speak your truth or however you want to call it. But just and when I first started the spirituality stuff on my podcast, like that's what it was. It was me like almost yelling, "Oh my God, this is a dream. Everything's crazy." You know, just expecting people to hear it and be like, "Oh, this is a dream. Wow." Obviously that's not how it works. Looking back, it's like how would that ever work? So my approach now is kind of just to state this stuff, put it out there and leave it alone. Walk away.
Yeah. And,
And
and it's
people
been liberating.
they'll come back to you. There's something very liberating about the void, about, you know, not having a ton of people listening to you. It takes this pressure off kind of, and it makes it fun.
Yeah, it kind of makes it like it's just an organic thing. Like rather than having to come up with the answers for everyone, you can just sort of like explore your own perspective and share it and not have any pressure on like anybody expecting anything of you.
Yeah. So there is something that I wanted to mention.
Mm-hmm.
I watched your YouTube video the other day about 5D.
Oh, the 5D magic manifestation, the only public video I have.
Hey, it was a great video. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Really, really good. So you talked about something in that video that is something that has obsessively been in my mind for a long time, and it's almost like just this concept that applies to everything. And then I heard some words to describe this like a year ago, right? And apparently these words that describe this have all these connotations attached to it. So the concept is as above, so below. Like the Bible would say, on earth as it is in heaven.
Mm.
Now, when I first heard as above, so below, I thought, oh my God, that's how you put this thing that's in my head into words. This is incredible. So I went out in the world talking about this, and I guess as above, so below, those exact words are really affiliated with Aleister Crowley and dark black mat, all this esoteric stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to explain to everybody that, well, when I'm saying as above, so below, I mean it having nothing to do with that. I mean it having nothing to do with anything. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
concept on its own. So what I heard you say in this video that really made sense to me is when you got to the ninth dimension.
Mm.
The ninth dimension where everything repeats forever on an infinite scale.
Yeah.
And this is something that it's just true. It just is. And I remember, I think it was this guy named Green Knight. That's his podcast. But he said the best description to me of what we're existing in right now. And that is a self-iterating hollow fractal creation.
Totally. Yes, I agree completely.
The way that you described the ninth dimension to me was that. It was the as above, so below. It's this idea that no matter how far out you zoom or how far in you zoom, it's the same thing. And it's always going to repeat forever, infinitely.
Yeah, infinitely. That's the thing too. It's so hard to explain. So it was really cool. I got that understanding, I think when I was about 21. I was just going for a walk in the evening. I was probably baked. I don't remember, but given the time of my life, I probably was. But I was just out walking in my town and I just got hit with this like perception of circles upon circles within circles, like all, it's impossible to describe. It was a clear visual and I understood what it meant, but it was impossible to describe. But basically it was like showing me that concept that like all consciousness expresses itself on an infinite scale of repeating patterns. And it like fractals is the best term to use to describe it. And it just exactly, and it's like ever blooming, ever unfolding, kind of like a kaleidoscope of fractals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And like it, when I don't know, I just feel so happy that my life path and my brain have allowed me to receive things like this, because similar to what you were describing, like just hopping out of bed. I mean, like I have my like slightly crusty days because human, but for the most part, I just feel like life is like a totally wild adventure and I desire to embrace it all because I'm able to see that and understand that and have a better context of like what this tiny bandwidth of experience really means in the huger picture of things. And that I really believe that our consciousness, like the consciousness of the soul that I am, exists across all those dimensions, not just this one.
Yeah, it has to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's stuff like this. It's like you see these truths, and then they're really hard to put into words. It's really hard to just express to another person lovingly, no matter how much you want to. And so for me, with that concept, it's always been the same kind of thing, like I mentioned earlier, where I just want to show you this thing that I've seen that changes everything. It changes everything, where things are pretty good all the time. We're all good, and there's nothing to worry about ever. You know, and even going as far as like what happens when you die. It's like just like, hey, you don't really die. There's nothing to worry about. We're
Yeah.
all, you know, and not to say that I'm perfect. Just like you said, I have bad days all the time. You know, but you remember, you forget, and then you remember.
Mm.
Just as energy has the buildup and the release of energy, you forget and then you remember. And that's the game, in my opinion. So imagine, just to get into the sort of dream stuff, like imagine you are this infinite being. You're everything. Everything. You are everything forever. Pretty cool, pretty fun, pretty nice. You know, but eventually you get kind of bored, really. You know, if you live in heaven forever, eventually you'll get used to it. It'll turn into hell. So we have to play this game of amnesia. Another concept is like, say there's, man, this is a really hard, it's a really hard one to spit out. But say there's something you like that you do all the time, and you pretty much have the ability to just do it as much as you want. You know, if you just keep doing it over and over, whatever this thing is going to get boring. So you have to force yourself to go without, so that when you do it again, it's more fun. Does that make sense at all?
Oh, it makes total sense to me. I totally, that's exactly how I understand like us and consciousness too, is like when Johnny was asking on the tinfoil hat episode, like, well, why would we come here and suffer? It's kind of like, because when you have access to everything, eventually it just feels like you want that kind of contrast, that adventurous experience. It's like floating on a placid lake in your inner tube versus going whitewater rafting. Like sometimes you just want to increase the rush. And the rush for us, I think, is really like forgetting who we are so that we can remember who we are.
I think that amnesia is the key,
Mm-hmm.
because if you remembered, like say you were born and then when you were 10 years old, somehow you just remembered everything. You just remembered who you are and what you are. When you really remember that, you pretty much do whatever you want. You take control of your life and your reality and stuff like that. It's probably not that fun, you know?
Yeah, or like it's the kind of thing that you maybe you want to do like in one lifetime out of 20 or something, right? Just for kicks, or to like have an effect on like elevating the general collective consciousness or something like that. But totally, if you came in with the full remembering of who you are, then like there'd still be challenge, but it'd also just be like, well, then really what's the point? Like
Yeah. Because you
there's
can't really be scared. Like you can't really feel any emotion to its fullest extent when you have this thing in your back of your head saying like, yeah, but well, you pretty much are God. So you don't
yeah,
really have to worry about this thing you're worrying about. It
yeah.
ruins, it spoils the fun.
Totally. It's like being in a movie or playing, well, I say it's like playing a video game, but I don't play any video games at all. I ended my video gaming career at Donkey Kong and Super NES. So that's how advanced I am. But my son, who's 16, plays a lot of games. And I feel like so much of the fun of playing a game is like you, on one hand, you know that you're the gamer, but on the other hand you start to get invested, like the games that are have the most draw are the ones where you get invested in your character and in your, whatever sort of environment it's set in and whatever kind of mission or like the point of the game or whatever. Whereas games like Gary's Mod that are all like sandboxes with some, I mean, I think that's the kind of game that we're in, but we come in with our own mission, because otherwise, if we're just in a creative field with nothing to do but create, that's kind of boring, because that's what it's like to be in those higher dimensions.
Yeah.
You don't have a body, you're just creating. Creation happens like that. It's instantaneous. But here it gets to be slow. It gets to be more challenging. It gets to be like you get to forget who you are and totally believe in the avatar identity that you carry.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I can't imagine playing any video game, and when as soon as you start to not do so good, you're like, well, this is just a game anyway, and throw the controller and go do something else. How fun is that game going to be? You're going to play it once.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is that suspension of disbelief or whatever I don't know quite what you would call it. But yeah, it's that amnesia and the remembering. And not only that, but I think when you really start to remember who you are, you don't like remember who you are and then just transcend. That's not what you're here to do. The fun to me is remembering who you are and then not just outright forgetting, but like you said and like I said, we have bad days.
Mm-hmm.
You forget. You don't just sit there with this constantly at the forefront of your mind. You forget and things get bad, and then you truly feel whatever emotion it is to whatever extreme, and then after you've processed that and dealt with it on your own or whatever, then you can remember like, yeah, but I am, an infinite being, love, like all this stuff. So to me, that is what we're here to do. To me, that is the dream aspect of it. To me, we are, at least for myself, I can say I'm like this trickster, and I'm throwing myself down here fucking with myself.
That's cool. So do you feel like you are the trickster archetype in this
Yes.
life? Yeah. That's
Absolutely.
cool. That's really, really cool. I love that. So interesting. So, I mean, I think that we have a very similar perspective on what this whole thing is and what this whole life, like the point of it. I'm interested in why you think it's been speeding up for you. Like, whereas you said before, like, do you think it's just gathering momentum, or do you think it has to do with the simulation changing? Like, why you're having more awareness of it constantly, whereas
Yeah.
before you
That's
didn't as
a
much.
really good question. A really good question. And I would have to say that a little bit of both, but I would honestly say that as with most things, the answer kind of lies in the middle there. A little bit of both.
Mhm.
Speeding up a little bit. I don't know why, but speeding up a little bit myself. And then something's going on with the simulation. I don't know what, but both kind of. And I don't know why. I have no clue. But I think if I knew why, it wouldn't be as fun.
Yeah, totally. I think so too. Like, if we had all the answers, it wouldn't be as much fun. And then it's like, that reminds me sometimes. I mean, I'm not too bad. I don't get overly mired in the happenings right now, but I think it's also because I'm really lucky to live in a small city in a rural county. So
Mhm.
I feel relatively safe, but also in Canada, some very weird, very communist, very draconian things are being rolled out. But so sometimes I get freaked out. And then when I have conversations like this, I'm like, the stakes just aren't as high as I think they are. Like
They're not.
yeah. Like so on one hand, I mean, they feel high, and therefore in a sense they are. But in the grander like scheme of things, from a more spanned out perspective, they're really not. Everything's actually okay. And this is just a weird simulation, and we're going through a really weird period. I don't know what's going on either, but it's interesting anyways.
When it comes to like what's going on in the world and stuff like that, the way I go about this type of stuff is not the most popular thing, but I'm not into politics. I know a lot of people say that. I really don't. I really like 15, 20 seconds of a politician speaking. I cannot physically sit there and do it. I just don't care, and people don't like to hear this. It's not a popular thing. But since COVID happened and all the craziness in the world, my life has gotten exponentially better,
Hmm.
right? 2020 was the best year of my life by far.
Amazing.
Like no other 2019 doesn't compare. It was nothing, and I can honestly say that everything going on in the world, my life in the slightest bit has not changed. Nothing. I'm fortunate that I haven't lost my job. I'm fortunate that I'm in a rural area where it just almost literally doesn't affect me at all.
Mm.
Like I'm a carpenter. I haven't missed a day. I just go to work, never worn a mask. And I
That's
don't see that as like some sort of political stance. It's just a fact. Never had to. No, nobody. When I go places, not a lot of places, but I go to the gas station, this or that, the grocery store. Nobody has ever asked me to wear a mask. That nobody has ever even mentioned it. And don't get me wrong, everyone here is wearing masks, but just nobody's mentioned this to me. Nobody cares.
That's so interesting.
It's wild. It's wild because I listen to podcasts and go on the internet and stuff, and this is like a huge deal everywhere. It's a huge deal. It's a political stance. It's this and that. It's chaos and nonsense. And then I look at my life and I'm like, I probably just shouldn't say anything about any of that because I'm fine. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that makes me wonder too how much of it, well, how much it's the simulation reflecting back to you like your lack of concern about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. I think that's exactly what it is. It has to be.
mhm. That's
You know,
so interesting.
it's really weird. It's really wild because every day I'm like, oh, I've gotten lucky for this long. It's today's gonna be the day someone tries to fuck with me. Never, nothing.
Wow.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And I don't think, I love myself, but I don't think of myself like super highly and egotistical. I'm not walking around like I'm great. If anything, it's the opposite. Like I'll doubt myself. Like, oh, is this gonna be okay in certain situations? I can say honestly, at least the year 2020 and so far 2021, everything has been perfect. There have been no issues in any way whatsoever. And it's the weirdest thing because, the other 27, 28 years of my life, there's been all kinds of problems. People have fucked with me. There's been, just a normal life. I've gone through the normal trials and tribulations of life. But the year 2021, since all this happened, my life has gotten really good, really, really good. And sometimes I hate to say that because there's people whose lives might not be good, but it's the truth. So I have to say it.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that I think that works against us, and I think it is an offshoot of like it's probably a offshoot of something deeper than this, but it's an offshoot of sort of like the trigger warning sort of culture and trying to be sensitive of each other and not where our happiness and our well-being, like for all to see. Like it's not about being boastful, but I feel like we've been programmed to be really apologetic about it. And it's like, but why? That's such
Yeah,
a weird concept. And I think that's a psyop.
it
Because
is.
why would we ever, feel like but I do too. Like I shouldn't talk about, that I have this great thing going on in my life and that great thing, because what if it, upsets other people who don't? And I kind of realized like, well, that's dumb because it might upset them, but like that's none of my business. It's not my responsibility. And it's
Right.
not necessarily a bad thing because sometimes we just get triggered and then we sort through our trigger and we realize, like, oh, actually, this lets me know that I can have good things too, right? Like there's a whole
Yeah.
available range of responses that people can have. But I was thinking about like, so I have a 2-year-old and we just adore her and love her up so much every day. And I think about what a great life she has compared to, you know, the life that some kids have. And
Right.
then I think how if like I had a good childhood and sometimes I feel like that diminishes my credibility in some way and I'm like, what? Why would that, like, why would anybody ever feel like they have to apologize for the good things that they
Yeah.
have rather than just use it as a springboard to like share more positivity?
Well, that's how we're programmed,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And if I feel the same way. I feel almost the exact same way. I have a 4-year-old, and I look at him and I know, in my own mind, I know how much I love that kid. And I know the disturbing extent that I would go to protect him,
Mm.
from all kinds of things. And just like you said, I'm like, not every kid out there has that kind of love. Not every kid out there has somebody who would do anything for them. And like you said, it makes me feel bad. And then, yeah, I remember that's because of our programming and our conditioning. I shouldn't feel bad, and you shouldn't feel bad either. You should just state the truth, and the truth be neutral, because the truth is objectively neutral. It just is.
Yeah.
But we're programmed into this duality. We live in a duality for sure. Everything has its polarities and stuff, but we're programmed into thinking that things are really bad or they're really good, when in reality, everything's kind of in the middle. Everything.
Totally. I totally believe that nothing has an inherent objective meaning. Everything is subjective. Nothing can be actually verified objectively. It's all observation bias, and that we're the ones that put meaning onto anything. So totally, the truth is just it's just stating a neutral fact, and it's us that like kind of cloud it up with all of the attachments we put on it.
Yeah, with our own self-doubt and our own worry and things like that.
Yeah.
You want to talk about like psyops and stuff like that. So my podcast, I changed the name of my podcast like 4 or 5 months ago to The Wrong Warp. Before that, it was called Ketsuban versus the World, and it was a conspiracy show. That's what it was about. It was about conspiracies. And I what someone does or doesn't believe doesn't really matter. I don't think belief, like your fundamental beliefs create your reality and stuff, but you just saying like I believe in this or I don't believe in this. I don't think that really means anything. Like just from what I've proved to myself that I have no concern and desire to prove to other people, pretty much everything is a psyop. Like the illusion that we live in, every little thing is to program you and condition you. And I don't know where that stops, because I look around at adults and I look around at Netflix or Hulu or the internet or Facebook. They're still being psyoped, like they're still being manipulated. Myself included sometimes. People I love sometimes. So I never want to say anything from a place of like talking down to people. Like
Yeah.
there's this guy that I really like. I'm not going to say his name, but he's like a spirituality conspiracy guy. Really good. He's got some stuff that resonates with me on a crazy level. But what he does, which to me is a huge mistake, is on the internet, on Instagram and stuff like that. He's one of these people, I know you've seen them, with the attitude of like, wake up, sheeple. You guys are idiots, letting them control you. You gotta wake up. It's just like this place of I'm better than you. Or this place of like I've ascended spiritually and I'm just trying to show you. It's very condescending.
Yeah, totally. And it's like it's also an Achilles heel, right? Anytime that we have feel any arrogance about our position, like in whatever area of life, we are turning our own vision away from the areas that I don't know, that aren't as developed, and it just like we operate out of hubris, and then it's like a weak area that doesn't get like it gets exposed by basically like some kind of humiliation where the universe is like smack, like get over yourself. But I agree with that a lot. And I mean, I think like 2020 was hugely awakening for me, even though I've been on an awakening journey for literally 20 years. It never ends. I don't have all the answers at all, but I love the exploration and I love the constant unfolding. But there was so much that I was unaware of in terms of like psyops, and like I knew about the programming, but I just couldn't see it in certain areas the way I do now.
Right.
And so I like in that sense, somebody totally could have accused me of being a sheeple, and they would not necessarily have been wrong. But I also think like, well, I'm just me. Like I'm just living my life exploring.
The problem I think is with the person calling you a sheeple. I think that's like when you really love Like when you really love and you really want good, like to happen outside of your own ego, you would never say that. You would never say, "Wake up, sheeple. You guys are dumb." Da, da, da." You would never act like that. You would say, "I love you all."
Yeah, and you don't have to change for me to be okay and for me to love you. You can
Yeah,
be exactly
exactly.
where you are. And
Exactly.
totally, and if you really understand like how the programming begins before we're even like literally conceived,
Mhm.
like from the point where we're like an idea of a potential human being.
Starts whenever the sperm meets that egg.
Yeah, or even before, like, right? Like, because we're seeded with all these concepts through our lives of what it means to be a parent, what it means to be a human, so that we're already programmed by the time that we
Ah, I
like
see what you're saying.
conceive
That's good.
a pregnancy. We already have all this programming. We have Stockholm syndrome, and then we sort of infuse it in that being's experience. And
Yeah,
so, like, when you understand how deep the programming runs, like, how could you judge anybody for being,
because you're the same as them. You
yeah,
were
and
traumatized just like they were.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's a really powerful campaign. Like, they're not like lightly programming us. We're
No.
being heavily, heavily, heavily programmed.
Something I've thought about recently that I didn't like, there's no solution. I didn't figure anything out. Is like, say hypothetically, what everybody wants, like everybody broke the programming and came together as one and all these magnificent magnificent things. So I feel like the extent to which we've been programmed and traumatized, would we know how to exist outside of that trauma? Like, for example, we get up, everybody gets up, they make the coffee, they get in the car, they go to the work. This idea of a normal day we have is really full of and created by that trauma.
Hmm.
Everything around you. So say yeah, we broke the programming, we all came together. What would we do?
Yeah, no, totally. I think you're completely right. I don't think we would. Like, I think that, and I mean, I really think that's why the awakening experience is gradual, even though it's accelerating, because I think like there's so much deconditioning that has to happen in order for it to be stabilized and actually anchored in this like this dimension, this realm. Like, because you can't just, well, I kind of think of like in Canada, we call them Indian residential schools. I know in the United States, there's the same thing. It just had a slightly different name, but it's basically where like children were taken off of native reserves and taken to boarding schools that were run by the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, and the United Church, and they were horrifically abused, and it was a horrible, horrible campaign to erase it. Literally, the words of the Indian Affair Minister in Canada was to kill the Indian in the child. So it's a
Oh
cultural
my
genocide.
god.
Yeah, and it went on for a long time. Like the last one in Canada closed, and I think it was 96. And like so there's a lot of
96, that's
judgment.
not that long ago.
I know there's a lot of judgment and racism in Canada towards First Nations people, but what they've survived is like it. I mean, it literally boggles the mind. But I think about that and like how so they're not being taken away to residential schools anymore. But in a lot of ways, so many of the communities don't know how to operate outside of that trauma because it's been generations and generations of it, that
Yeah,
like you don't just take away the problem and people are like, oh great, everything's fine now. It's like there's so much healing and deconditioning that has to happen, and I think that's true of human beings for sure, that like if we all came together in unity, like we can't, it has to be organic. Like we don't want to break the simulation holds us. We just want to
exactly.
change it, but we can only change it from within.
Well, exactly. It's like I don't know if what we're here to do, what I'm here to do, what you're here to do, what we're all here to do. I don't know if that is to break all this programming and come together. It sounds like a really sweet idea, but kind of like we mentioned earlier, as far as things get boring, from a masculine animal human perspective, that sounds a lot better than being poor. But from
Right.
a higher vibrational spiritual perspective, it's boring. That's boring. If we just came together and beat the game.
True, and like the coming together, like I think I think it's a big challenge because the reward will be so big, and then we'll probably just create a whole new simulation of a different version of a
Yeah,
similar challenge
yeah,
because the challenge is, you know, what makes this realm worth visiting, really.
of it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like I know myself personally, I would write a better script than that.
Mm,
I would write a better script than we just all come together now and everything's great. You know,
yeah.
and the type of script that I would write, especially if I was fucking with myself, which I would do, it'd be a lot more complex. There'd be a lot of tricks. Because imagine trying to trick yourself.
Mhm.
You know, you see a trick. Wait, I've fooled someone before this way. I see through this. Now imagine being that higher being, knowing that you're gonna see through that, and having to create like 8 layers of tricks. You know, it's never ending. That's what I would do. You know, and I think
So
knowing myself, that's probably what's going on.
that's the best sort of mental visual. It's like hire you being like, you're not getting through this one easy, and like creating an even more complex labyrinth for yourself.
Yeah, over and over, just like the ninth dimension thing, infinitely.
Yeah.
It has to infinitely get harder, you know. And then if you want to think of polarities, like, well, where does it end? Where does it begin? Who cares? Doesn't matter. I'm having a great time. And I think that inherently, no matter where anyone is in their spiritual journey or their awakening or anything like that, I think inherently we do all have the ability to have a good time and to love each other. And that's something that is it's really lost. It's really, really lost. You know, and I would never want to be the cringe guy talking about how society's, you know, all the music we listen to is bad. Like, I would never want to be someone in that position, but at the same time, yeah, our society's pretty fucked up. Like,
Totally.
you know, you look around, get on, like, everyone has their own individual world. Like your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, whatever. It's personalized. Who you follows you. Every single person, at least I did, thinks that their version, their world is good. It's okay. And that
Mhm.
they would never be fooled. You know, and the older I've gotten and the more mature I've gotten, I've realized that I am like the biggest fool. Like, it's so easy to trick me. You know what I mean? Half the
Yeah.
time you just say something that's not true and I'll be like, "Really?" You know? And I think that's, for me anyway, that's the way to be. You should be that way. Because I've lived the life of being skeptical of everyone and everything and every second. It's not that good. It's not that fun. And to finish the thought about how my podcast used to be about conspiracy theories and stuff. Don't get me wrong, I love them. I love a good conspiracy story, psyops and stuff. It's the best. But the world that I was living in for such a long time, doing that version of my show, was not a good one. It was like
Mhm.
dark.
Yeah. I think that's why Sam started zero, because I think you go, you know, it is a rabbit hole and it gets dark down there. And it doesn't mean none of that's true, but it's like you have to come up for air. You have to see a different perspective because there is more. And like really I think that there's infinite everything for us to
I agree.
see and respond to, or like perceive and respond to, and whatever we put our attention on gets activated and more real, more and more like
Absolutely.
hyper focused, vividly detailed, technicolored. Our attention is so important and powerful. And I think like I noticed that when, so this year, like I had never heard of MK Ultra before this year. Never heard of it. And so then when I heard about it, I got super interested and I could immediately see like somebody shared Out of Shadows with me. And I was like, oh yeah, I can see. I've never been into like Katy Perry or Lady Gaga. It's just not my thing.
Right.
But I could see how I was like, wow, yeah, that is like, even if you take out all the symbolism that's in their videos, it's a simulated version of reality that
Yeah.
separates you from the organic reality and it sucks you in. So then I went down the rabbit hole of like watching a bajillion YouTube videos of celebrity MK Ultra glitches and weirdness, right? And I noticed after a while that even that has a glamour cast over it that wants to pull you deeper and deeper into that world
Hmm.
of like chasing that you know, like Macaulay Culkin and his weird rabbit ears. Like it's almost like he's representing the elusive rabbit that you never catch, but you chase
Oh my god,
farther out of your own.
I
It's
love that.
taking you out of your own game. It's taking you to a dead end in your labyrinth. And like it's so important for us to stay focused on, or just to be mindful. It's not like, again, the stakes aren't high, but it's just to be mindful that our attention is really powerful,
Yeah.
and that they know that, and they want to create distractions that pull us out of the power of our attention and direct it where they want it to be directed.
Yeah, and they're very successful.
Yes, they are. They're very smart. They
Like
know how we work.
and one of my biggest issues is like, yeah, they're very successful. They've got pretty much this entire world around me, doing what they wanted to do. But when you do start to wake up and you do start to see this stuff, you can't unsee it, and it becomes extremely blatant. It
Yeah.
becomes so blatant. You see something anew, like what was that song "WAP" by Cardi B? Have you heard this?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
this song "WAP,"
Yeah.
um, I remember like hearing that for the first time, and just like there's so many thoughts of like, oh, it's just to sexualize children, teach women that it's okay to be a whore, basically, all this stuff. To me, it's like that's not good. That's no bueno.
Mm.
Oh, but there's infinite young girls right now who would go against me saying I'm crazy and stupid, and you can look at it through the lens of like, I'm only saying this because I love you. I don't want you to I don't want you to be that, because that is objectively not good. Then how many rebuttals do you think could be made against what I just said?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, even just the feeling of defensiveness of like, being like, but I love that track. Like it makes me want to dance. Like, don't take it away from me. Don't fuck this up for me.
Yeah,
Dan.
yeah,
You
that's
did.
what it is.
Let me enjoy it.
And it's like
Totally.
I'm worried, not worried, but like I don't want to be the party pooper. I don't want to poop on everyone's party and tell them not to have a good time. But it's like, well, you are being like completely controlled from the
Yeah,
moment you wake up to when you go to bed. Your fucking phone is telling you what to do, and you're obeying it like a fucking
I know.
like a dog.
It's wild. It's so wild to think about. And totally, it's hard. You just want to like let people know. That's where it comes in, where it's like you just want to let people know, but if they're not primed and ready to know, like I don't know. I mean, if somebody had told me about celebrity MK Ultra or MK Ultra in general a couple years ago, I probably would have believed it, but there would have been some things that I wouldn't have believed for sure. And because I wasn't there. Like I needed the prerequisite information
Yeah,
to feed
and
my
that's so
ability to
important.
see it.
That's like
Mhm.
the key, is that prerequisite information. Because if I went to a bunch of little girls right now and said, "Hey, this song is like gonna hurt your life,"
Yeah, it wants to hurt you.
like the problem is you lose them.
Mhm.
It's not like later on you can come back and say, "Hey, I know I went about this wrong." Da 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 da. No, you lose them
Yeah,
when you come off too strong. You lose them.
totally. It reminds me of like when I was in high school and my mom had like, obvious reservations about my scruddy high school boyfriend, but she kind of knew like she couldn't come down too hard on it because it would have just made me be rebellious and like, no, mom,
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
him. Like,
and
yeah,
the parents' plight, man. What a crazy thing.
yeah,
You having a kid, I have a kid. Like I remember being a kid and just be like, "Fuck you, mom. You just told me to have fun." And now from the perspective I have, it's like, "Oh my god, you just love me. You
yeah,
just want me to be okay."
I
But
know.
it's such a crazy, crazy thing to me. The programming, the conditioning, all this stuff. And a reaction that I get super often is people will tell me I'm probably right. They'll tell me that, but they don't care.
Yeah, that's what I get. Well, I don't know how it is now because I haven't talked to him about it in a while, but like, I don't know. I think I gave up on talking about it maybe probably in June, but talking to my dad about this stuff, it was like, you might be right, but I
Okay.
just wanted stay in my life, and I want to like watch my shows and I don't want to think about it. So just
Everyone. That's
yeah,
a great metaphor for everyone.
yeah, totally.
And one big thing, it's like you should care, so flat earth, the concept of flat earth is not about the earth being flat.
Hmm.
The idea behind flat earth is all of the lies. It's all of the lies and the programming and the conditioning. But it's been convoluted similar to astrology. It's been convoluted to look stupid. It's
Oh,
made to look like only idiots talk about this kind of stuff. And that, to me, that's an obvious psyop. And astrology was like that for a really long time, to me. I'd read horoscopes, kind of figured out the pattern when I was little. The people making these horoscope apps, it's like, oh, it's a fortune cookie. You're just writing something that will apply to anybody. Stupid, delete the app, never think about it again.
yeah.
And then anyone who talks about that stuff to me, in my mind, they're an idiot. You know, I probably lived 10 years that way from when I was 18, 19 and now. And it's not until the past 6 months that my mind is, holy shit, it's all about astrology. Astrology is encoded in everything. Every fucking thing around us is astrology. I've realized this and I can see it. I can see astrology being encoded into everything. A big one for me was the 12 Jesus's 12 apostles or whatever. That was a big one that when I read into that, I was like, holy shit, this is the zodiac signs, right?
Yeah.
But I love it. I think it's amazing, but I get stuck there because I don't quite know what to do with this information. Like
Hmm.
I can see it everywhere, but what does this mean for me?
Right. And so like what are the parts that, because the astrotheology part is pretty new to me too. Did you hear about it by from Micah Dank, an interview with him? Because he's really
Actually,
good.
it was a guy before Micah Dank.
Okay.
There was somebody that came on tinfoil hat
Mhm.
before Micah Dank.
I know
Like
who you mean. I can't remember his name. I
that
know
was the
exactly.
Green Knight guy. That was the guy
Oh,
who
okay.
said the term self-iterating hollow fractal creation.
Oh, cool.
And I just love that. Like that is what I will forever describe this as.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. It is so good. That part is like new to me, but it was also super mind blowing. And I was like, wow, yeah, everything is like astrology encoded in our mythology. But in terms of the like astrology and how it applies to our lives, that makes I understand that because it's not really that new to me.
See,
And
so kind of the opposite here.
so
You
you
know,
understand the astrotheology, that makes a lot of sense to you, but the astrology and how it applies to your life is
yeah.
I mean, I like the way I used to understand it when I was younger, because it was probably the first thing, like even before I was 18. I think when I was like maybe 15 and 16, I was really interested in it, but it was beyond just like the horoscopes in, the girl magazines that I was reading, teenage girl magazines. I could tell that there was something more there, but I never wanted to become an astrologer because I think it's just a little bit too mathematical for me, and I just like to sit around and postulate. But to me, it's like all of the zodiac signs have a particular hue or a particular vibration. And every time, or all, not just the zodiac signs, but the signs and the planets. And every time a baby's born, there's like like it kind of looks like stained glass. That's how my brain understands it. So, like every zodiac sign has a different shade of stained glass. And then the planets have different, they're emitting like different wavelengths or something like that. And when a baby's born, these planets are shining through the different combinations and layers of glass that it just like changes the light that shines upon them when they're born so that it encodes them with a different frequency. And I don't think that's a very good way of explaining it, but
No,
that's how
I
it
get that. I totally understand that part. Like, that it's where the planets, the sun and all this stuff, it's
is.
where it was when you were born, and it creates like a stamp on your
Yeah,
soul.
exactly. A lot of the time, they really are waiting for a very specific planetary configuration,
Yeah.
because it's really going to affect the way that their life unfolds, and that's how they want it to be.
So it's like a cycle, right? Like every year Like, so if you were born right now,
Mhm.
2021, Saturday, whatever, as opposed to 1 year from now, are
Right.
the planets in the same, or is all that stuff aligned the same each time, or it's just different?
Different every time,
So it
every
can
year.
never be the same.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So people, what about people born at the same time on the same day? Is that not very common?
I'm sure it's like given the number of human beings that are being born all the time, but it also is like, where are they born on the planet? Because that affects the angles. So if you look at somebody's birth chart, that affects the angles between the different planets as they are in the signs in the houses.
That makes sense. So in theory, if two people, like, it would never happen mathematically, but if two people were born in the same place at the same time, would they be really similar?
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing question because as a midwife, I did occasionally see it when like I wouldn't
Really?
say exactly the same time, but within minutes of each other. Like there would be situations where there'd be two laboring women and you'd kind of be like, which one's going to be born first? And like they almost come right at the same time. And I imagine that personality wise, they would have a lot of similarities, but the circumstances of their lives would make them different, right? So that they're not just like cookie cutter robots just because they were
Right.
born at the same time. But also, I also had this theory that the the parts of our chart that because like sometimes, so for example, I don't have any Gemini in my chart at all whatsoever, but I have a lot of Geminis in my life, and I think that the parts of our chart that we have like certain planets and certain signs or whatever that we have a lot of activity, those are the sort of predetermined, they're the filled in spaces, and the parts of our chart that are empty are the negative space, but that's where life fills it in for you as it's unfolding, so that we're all actually a balance of all the signs.
Mm, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I understand that regardless, I kind of understand that regardless of your signs, your houses, that you are the whole zodiac.
Yeah.
And I get that. It makes perfect sense that these are 12 parts of yourself. It's just like I understand so much stuff to no conclusion. Like I've been like trying to figure this shit out for like 3 months now. And what happens is every conclusion I come to as far as in regards to what do I do with this stuff, every answer that I find is unsatisfactory. Not because I read the answer and say, well, that's not good enough, but because I can just see the flaw in it or see the hole. And a lot of times it'll just be too vague. A lot of times it'll just be like, these are your signs. You should try being more nice to people, stuff like that. And it's like, that can't be the conclusion to all this great stuff. But I
Yeah,
feel like I'm
I
missing something.
yeah, I don't think it is. And I think so we were before we started recording, I was just telling Ketsuban that I've had an annoying week with Mercury retrograde fucking up my shit and glitching out my tech and just like it's not hasn't been a dramatic disaster, but it's just been a whole bunch of little irritations piled on top of each other. And we were kind of like talking about Mercury retrograde and what even is it? And is it an actual thing, or is it just something we've put so much of our collective conscious energy into that we've manifested it as a thing? I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a real thing, but I think the more of us and the more memes that circulate, the more belief goes into it, the more, more energy is there. Anyway, I was saying that I don't actually even follow astrology, even though that was like sort of my gateway into looking at patterns and understanding like life and the world as more. But I don't follow astrology forecasts, not because I don't think that there's any value to them, but because I suppose I suppose it just doesn't call to me right now. Like also, similarly, I don't do any psychedelics, but not because I think there's like I don't have any moral stance on it at all. It's mostly because I'm a mom and I'm like been pregnant, breastfeeding, trying to get pregnant for the last at least 6 years. So you know, like sometimes we just don't subscribe to things, but it doesn't mean that we have judgment against them. But I think like, I do think that there is a lot to astrology though. And I think that there are people who really, really understand it and they know how to look at what's going on in the configurations of the planets at a given time and be able to navigate the energies. Like, what is it? I think Sam says it, like that millionaires don't use astrology, but billionaires do.
Yeah, JP Morgan said that.
Yeah. So, okay, awesome. That makes sense to me because it's like there is something going on. And especially when you hear Micah talk about it, or the other guy, I feel so bad that I can't remember his name, but I just didn't prepare, so I don't. But when I hear them talk about it, I'm like, oh, this is really, really powerful energy. These are, I always knew they were strong archetypes and legitimate archetypes, but also they continue to have an effect on the way that energy unfolds and manifests here. And I just don't understand it because it's not calling to me to explore it. But I think that there's a lot of value there. I think that if people know how to break it down properly and read it properly, that it's kind of like knowing the weather patterns or something.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah,
No,
it's
it's
knowing
not
the
useful.
energetic weather
Like,
patterns.
I agree with you that that's kind of what it has seemed like. Is like they can look at what's going on, astrology. They can look at what's going on in the stars, and they can kind of get an idea of what's about to happen, type of thing. Like that does make sense to me, but it it just seems like the ending that I keep coming to is that it's just a description and a prediction, and
Mm.
I'm reaching for, like, there's got to be more value there. There has to be
Mhm.
something I can do with this, because if it is simply just predicting in general what things might happen, even if it's right, what use does that have to me?
Well, I wonder if it's not predicting what thing, like it is, it can be used for predicting what things might happen for people that are kind of enterprising and want to capitalize off of it, or people who just want to sort of like for example, I did listen to a couple astrology predictions at the beginning of 2020 because it started to feel like a pretty intense year when the Australian wildfires were happening.
Mhm.
And it was really interesting to listen to a few different astrologers be like, oh, we've known for a long time that this was the year the shit was hitting the fan, but we just didn't know how. Because you can't predict exactly how it's going to manifest. You can just feel like this energy is going to, like, this archetype is going to interact with this archetype in this kind of way, which is either
Yeah.
harmonious and supportive, or it's like dissonant and erratic, for example. And so enterprising people would be able to use that, I think, to their advantage in making, like, I don't know, big power moves, like whether it's in business or just in life in general. But I think it's kind of like just a way of sort of like navigating the ocean without necessarily predicting. It's like navigating all the waves and understanding ourselves. Like I think that was what drew me into astrology when I was younger, was the archetypes just seemed so relevant, and I got really good at being able to pinpoint what people's usually their sun sign was, but also sometimes their other two major players, like their rising sign and their moon sign. Like I could just see those archetypal energies playing out through them. So I think that they're really, really real, and that's why it was so interesting to me here how they're encoded in our stories of like our biblical stories. That was wild. That completely blew my mind.
Yeah, same
um
here.
Not, I'm not a student of the Bible, so it's not like it shattered my illusions, but I just had never made that connection myself, and that was really powerful. But I think it's like it offers us an opportunity to like learn something about ourselves, but also sort of like understand the energy patterns that flow through the simulation.
It makes sense.
But so does numerology, right? Like numerology is different, but similarly, I'm not a numerology person, but I'm always blown away when I hear people talk about gematria. I'm like, Oh my God. Like there's so much, there's
Yeah,
so much happening.
gematria, I think it's the same. Like it's incredible, but I get lost on it too
Yeah.
because I can, I don't. All I can do is Google like a gematria calculator, right?
Yeah.
And then type something in. And my issue with that, and I probably just don't fully understand how it works. I don't know. But my issue with that is no matter what you type in, you get like 100 results. You type in a number, you get
Mm,
100 words that could mean. You type in
right.
a word, you get 100 numbers. So similar to the issue I had with astrology, it's like I could pretty much just make this mean whatever I wanted. Like confirmation bias. I
Yeah.
could pretty much just look at it in whichever way I want to kind of confirm what I already know. And it's just like astrology. I know that there's something there, but so far, what I've seen doesn't satisfy me. So far, it's like there is more to this, more than maybe people even know of in the world right now. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Totally maybe. I definitely think like I agree with you. Like I think it's a real thing. Like for myself, I've observed the way that it affects people's personalities and their energy that they express. That's kind of where it makes sense to me. But I've also read a couple good books in my younger years. One of them was Cosmos and Psyche. It was really good about the outer planets and the generational events. That was really cool. So I think that there's stuff to it, but I I don't know. I don't really know what to make of it. And I also think like it just everything isn't for everyone too. Like
Right.
so like for example, numerology is just not for me. I think it's really cool and I believe that there's like a lot of power and there's a lot of patterns, but it just doesn't call to me. But similarly, like the Akashic records don't call to everyone. And I
Right.
just think, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's so much available here. It's like infinite cool revelations that we can find in this life, and the ones that are meant for us call to us. But
Yeah.
maybe this one is meant for you, but you haven't found the thing that makes it, yeah, makes it make sense, make it seem like, well, okay, but like why do we care? What is this supposed to do?
Yeah.
What
And
does
it's
it
like
apply to
I'm
us?
obsessed with these things. I'm obsessed with gematria, astrology, numerology. I'm just obsessed with figuring them out.
Mm,
And so I'm not there. I haven't figured them out. I think that's a good place to be. That's where I am. Like numerology, for instance, when you start looking into numerology, what I found is that every single number is incredible. Every number has a million reasons why it's the greatest number. I've never
right.
I've never seen a number that's like, seven is just seven. Like
Yeah.
every number is incredible. And it's like I can grasp that. I can grasp that that's true, that every number is incredible. But why then? It's like if every number is so incredible, then none of them are incredible. But then just like you just said, there's something there and I'm gonna find it.
Yeah, I think I like totally. I mean, I think that's why I've never gotten deeper into numerology is because all of the entry points are usually kind of like to find out your life path number and you're this number and that number, right? And then like every single one is usually like you're amazing and this is why. And
Yeah.
and so I kind of get bored because I'm like, duh, I know I'm amazing at this point in my life. But I think that's really interesting because it's true. It's like every single number on its own without being, somebody's life path number, but just the number has an amazing energy to it. It's
Yeah.
just like incredible. I think the same is true of human beings. Like I think it's like true every single one is amazing, but they can all be amazing without taking away from each other or anything like that. I think that's the same of humans. It's like people think that the snowflake analogy is like, I don't know, for millennials or whatever, and like, oh, little snowflakes, and everybody's so special. And we have a generation of people whose parents told them they were snowflakes, and now they think that they're something special or whatever. But to me, I'm like, Yeah, but we all are. Like, we're
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
every single one of us is so amazing. Like, I think everyone is literally the most fascinating person in the world.
yeah.
Even
And
though that would mean like our linear mind is like, but if everyone is, then no one is. But like
I
somehow
mean,
magically though.
it's like it's like that, and that's kind of the only satisfactory thing that I have pulled from these things is that yeah, everything's pretty fucking special and sweet and amazing and thrilling and it's just like it goes back to the ninth dimension thing where everything contains everything else.
Yeah.
Every single person you meet is that special, but they also have a dark side to them, and they have this and that and all the zodiac out. It's like everything is everything,
Yeah.
so everything is nothing. So nothing is everything. So it just goes in a loop in my mind. That's always where I end up. And then I remember like, oh, I'm back to this place. And then I go start at a different starting point. And that's just kind of been my pattern. And it really makes me feel like Ouroboros, just
Mhm.
chasing the tail. But it's like if I didn't do that, would I exist? Am I just supposed to chase my tail? I don't know.
Right. And like, yeah, what is the alternative? As if you could even like you said, when you see things, you can't unsee them. So there's no going back anyway. But what would be the alternative? Like just chasing
Yeah.
nothing, or I don't know. I don't know. But something interesting that occurred to me back when we were talking about psyops, and when you said that your like your higher self is fucking with you and like making it harder and harder to crack the code.
Mhm.
I was like, oh my God, are the dark archons just us? An aspect of us that's like fucking
Asking me,
with us
yes.
and trying to keep us locked in the labyrinth?
If you're asking me, everything around you is created by you. You
Yeah,
did this. You made this for you. Everything is for you, just for you, given to you by you.
yeah,
The idea, I don't know how you feel about the idea of infinite timelines, but in my opinion, there are infinite timelines. There's a version of this where this whole podcast, my head's like over here. I really believe that. There's just a infinite version for everything, that ninth dimension stuff. But and this really helps me a lot of the time, and it's something you should always remember. You love this version of you so much that whatever it is you went through, it's still worth it to you. You still want to play this version out over all the other versions because you love this version of you that much. You think you're
totally.
great, and that that gives me a warm, happy feeling. I'm like, all right, you son of a bitch, and I keep on playing the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. I also believe, and I believe in infinite timelines. I perceive timelines. The way I perceive it is like there are some timelines that are more probable rather than possible because there's more energy to them. There's more
Yeah,
magnetism. Like they were more of a possibility when you fractured off and made, whatever tiny minute decision caused the branch off. But I definitely think that, I mean, that's been my experience, that like no matter how, and maybe this is just speaking to like the great life that I've had, but I've had really hard things happen too, and I feel like I do love this life so much that this is the one I want to play.
yeah.
This is the one I want to play.
Something I've struggled with just talking to friends and stuff like that, which maybe I shouldn't be talking to them. Just like I was talking about in the beginning, I'm not supposed to just try to get people to believe me. But like, I, I've expressed these ideas to some friends, and they really like them and everything, but they get lost. They get lost, and they think, why would I make me go through this? Why would I make this happen to me when I was a kid? Why would I make this happen to my mom? Why would all these things? And the only answer that I have is I don't know. I don't know why you did that, but you did it. And people, that's where I start to lose people, is they don't want to believe that. They don't want to. But if you're asking me, one of the best things that you can do in this reality is take accountability for everything.
Hmm.
You chose it. And in my version of really what's going on, it's like you're in a room. You're in a room, you and God. God is this infinite creator thing, and you're just another version of him that he
Hmm.
made. You're both just sitting there looking at these holograms and having a good time. You're just hanging out. So it's like, I don't know why you would make that happen to you, But I do know that you are God, and that you're just hanging out with God right now, and that I don't know specifics, but I know that you love this and you chose it. And people don't want to hear that, so
Yeah.
I stopped doing that. But that's one of those things where it's just me trying to convince people. But that's where I get lost a lot of the time, and I look back in my own life, and I've had some trauma. I think everybody's had some trauma, but I've had some bad trauma. And the place that I'm at in my life now, yeah, I take accountability. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't be who I am now. And I think even that concept has become cheesy and convoluted, but it's so true. If you didn't go through all this stuff, you wouldn't be where you are now. And I think that people lose that. They lose sight of that. That's a real concept, that you should be grateful for everything that's ever happened to you, because you wouldn't be here right now. Some version of yourself that's younger in the mind. Your mind would be younger.
Yeah. I really think that everything that we experience leads us to more of ourselves, but we don't always allow ourselves to experience that more. We choose instead, often because of the programming, we don't understand how to navigate it. We choose to experience it as being diminished, so we're less of ourselves. And I I think that the part that, everybody, that people object to, not everybody, but people object to, and when those conversations come up, is like their ego selves wouldn't choose those things. Like, it's not like going to a candy store as yourself, as your avatar, and choosing like, oh, I want like this shit awful thing to happen to me. I want to
Right.
witness my mom be beat up by her shitty boyfriend, and
Right.
have that scarred into my psyche. It's not like that. It's like, if there are infinite things to choose from, and that, and on, from the soul consciousness side, you're an infinite being, the stakes aren't high at all, and you're wanting to experience yourself, that's what all of this is all about, that's the only thing any of it is about, then
Mm-hmm.
you're going to create different like parameters within which to experience your consciousness as an identity, and all the possibilities of how your concept of your identity can evolve as it interacts with all of those circumstances. It's like you're not choosing it in a like masochistic way. You're choosing it from a very much higher dimension sense of self that just doesn't feel it the same way as we feel it when we're humans on earth. And then so when we're humans on earth, and we hear somebody say like, you chose this on some level, or you created this on some level, the natural instinct is to get defensive and be like, fuck you, I would never choose this. Like, I lived through shit and hell. And but I think when you get to that point where you realize you like really integrate it, and you're like, oh, but it didn't actually take anything away from me. Like, it sucked. It was painful. It was dark. It was, there wasn't beautiful things about it. It wasn't an enjoyable experience, but it didn't take anything away from me. Actually, it just led me to more of myself. Then
Yeah,
you don't feel the same disempowerment to it ever again.
that's a great way to put it. It makes sense to me thinking of it like food. Every food, everything you put in comes out and stuff like that. You have to eat this experience to get to this place. It's just like a meal. You chose this because this would happen, or you wanted to witness yourself like this, or you needed to. But my point is, it's you. It's you. It's always you.
Yeah.
It's never anyone else. It's never anything else, because this pretty much is all you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think it's the same. Like, if you take, I don't know, I think the word accountability can be sort of like, again, like misunderstood, but I totally understand what you mean. It's like
Yeah.
when you take it and you accept that it's you on some level that you might not understand with your conscious mind, and that's fine. Then it just feels less disempowering. It feels less like something outside of you is doing this to you.
Yeah.
It's more like, oh, I'm experiencing myself
Yeah.
within the
And
framework of these circumstances.
a lot of the times whenever I'm in like I don't know, you'd call it a bad situation, or like I don't like what's going on, I and I think this is the key. I think this is one of the keys to life, for lack of a better word, is when things do get that dark, when things do get to where your animal masculine self doesn't like it, just remembering that you did it, even when it's dark, remembering that I don't know why I don't know where this is going to lead me, whatever, but I do know that I did it, that if it's happening, I must have done it. And I trust myself and I know myself.
Yeah,
So then you let go, and then you're just
that's it.
floating.
That's it. It's not exactly like the liberating aspect is where you're like, oh, but I guess it's hard to be there if you don't fully love yourself too, right? Because
Right.
like for me, it's easy to say like, yeah, I trust myself. I trust what I chose for myself before this whole thing was set in motion, and that I continue to choose for myself because everything's happening in this now moment. And I don't know where it's going, and it doesn't have to feel good, but I trust that like I trust me, right? But
Yeah.
if you don't trust you, if you don't love you and you don't trust you, it's hard to get there, and it feels much more like, being accused of making bad choices, which is not at all what, because I've made terrible choices. So I am not judging anybody's choices. But I think that's why, people get lost when this kind of, when the conversation goes in this direction, because they feel like they're accused of making
Yeah.
bad choices.
And it's again, so it's become so convoluted and it's become so corny, but it's really all about knowing yourself. So
Yeah.
all this is getting to know you. That's what this experience is. And we look to the external for answers. And I know you've heard this. I know anybody listening's heard it a million times, but you gotta look inward. The answers are inward. It's all in there. You don't need anything else
All in
ever.
there.
You
Yeah.
have it all. You're everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And it will be revealed in its own due time.
And it's you have to, I guess, at the beginning level, learn to love yourself, and then really get to know yourself and really start trusting yourself. And when you do start to actually trust yourself, that's when things get really good.
Hmm.
From an lower self perspective, that's when things get really good, is when you learn how to trust yourself. And maybe loving yourself is a good starting point. I think a lot of people don't love themselves, a lot of people that I see, and that's like an inherent problem. And you can address all the issues you want. You can treat the symptoms all day long. You can pay for this, you can do that, a million things. But until you treat the inherent cause, you're doomed to just repeat the same thing. And what I think is really pretty and beautiful about that is that it's the same for everyone. It's not like the answer for me is I got to trust myself, but you're on a different path. No,
Hmm.
the answer is I got to trust myself. You got to trust yourself, and the path will be revealed
Hmm.
every time, universally. That's a constant. And something that I trust within my reality is constants. When I see that things are the same. And I
Yeah.
guess that takes me to all these books, these sacred texts that I would be going through on my podcast day in and day out. All these different texts that are sort of explanations of how we got here, right? And there's a million different versions. There's the Bible, there's the Seth material, the raw material, the truth content. There's a million things out there, and they're all different, but there are a few constants, and those constants are what I trust. And
Hmm.
one of those constants is about your thoughts creating your reality. And I think that can get super convoluted too, but I think that's something else that's the key that people need to understand. And something else that has been convoluted, but it essentially is this concept, is manifestation.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the reasons I'm so interested in trying to articulate manifestation, because I mean, like, I'm not perfect at it, but I get better at it all the time as I understand new pieces, and then I always want to share it because it's often misunderstood. And same with like thoughts create your reality, which they absolutely do. But there's like these little pieces that have to be broken down sometimes for people to understand, like, well, how do my thoughts create my reality? I think Joe Dispenza does a great job at that particular part, because he talks about like how the thoughts produce, like the thoughts that we repeatedly practice give directives to our physical selves, like on a cellular level, because he's really good with the body and health, that manifests as like, so basically it's like we have neural pathways and they trigger the release of certain chemicals and hormones associated with that thought. And that creates an emotion, an experience of an emotion. And then the emotion feeds back to the thought. And then we start like rendering it in our external reality, and through our reticular activating systems collecting evidence that that thought is true. And so we repeat the thoughts and we get stuck in these loops of what we're creating.
Yep. And it's like sabotaging yourself, really. Have you ever heard of this guy named Neville Goddard?
I have, yeah.
Neville Goddard is my favorite when it comes to this sort of stuff. His life was way before manifestation was a term. And any time that something becomes a term, it's being convoluted every time without you see, like I know girls who are like they're like in these Facebook groups where they try to manifest stuff for each other. And then the thing is, like, that could work, but the way that I see it being done, it's not going to work. And it's not like my opinion, like, I don't like what you're doing, but it's like, you guys just have the wrong idea. It's being convoluted on purpose. The same with astrology.
Yes.
And, where it's just made to look like only an idiot would be involved with this. So there are people who are really close.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I think there's a reason that it gets sort of misunderstood. Like, I'm not saying that I think everybody who propagates information about manifestation is wrong and deliberately misleading. Like, I know my explanations don't carry like, I'm just trying to improve on them all the time, but I know they don't carry the full articulation of everything that goes into it. And I think like a lot of people get it and they have a hard time explaining it, but because I think the reason is there's this overlay that's kind of applied to our consciousness when you see the term manifestation thrown out all the time, and it's associated with certain kind of graphics, certain colors, certain fonts, that kind of thing, then your brain makes a subconscious association that it's like something that like girls in business do who wear a specific kind of hat. And that's not, like, it might be something that some of those girls do, but it's not just that. There's so much more. And then so your brain automatically sort of devalues it if you don't consider yourself to belong to that group, for example, that you've made that association about. Your brain devalues it a little bit, and then now there's doubt, and the doubt will sabotage the whole entire process.
It's so funny, like, to whoever chooses to convolute these things, they really understand it.
They know how to run us, don't they? They really know how to puppet us. And we are like, I also am so gullible. I'm skeptical, but I also check myself all the time because I'm like, I'm so easy to fool.
Yeah.
But we all are. We all are.
And usually people are easy to fool. It's just because they're trusting, it's, if you fool me and then I found out I was fooled, it's not going to ruin my world. I'm just going to think like, oh, of course.
Yeah.
It's just because I trusted you. I'm not wrong. You are.
And I think we're trusting because it's also like there's deliberate stuff that's kept from us too, like understanding the way the simulation works, but also understanding the way that we work and the way that we render reality, and how all these little subconscious plants make a difference to us, right? Like, if we don't really understand that, then we don't see the way that we're being subconsciously programmed a lot of the time. And we all have blind spots. I certainly have blind spots for sure, where we're being subconsciously programmed and we don't realize it because we don't know how it's happening.
Yeah. I mean, I'm full of blind spots.
Yeah.
So this Neville Goddard guy, in my opinion, you want answers, look to that guy. That guy got it. He was in like the 1930s or the 1940s or something, but he really got it. According to Neville Goddard and me, The manifestation stuff is really easy. It's
Mhm.
really, really easy. All you have to do is assume the end. You assume the end and you live in the end
Yeah.
as though it were true,
Yeah.
right? And now this is where people get a little bit confused, and this is where I was confused for a while. Your beliefs create your reality. Whatever you inherently believe, that's true. That's how that works. You believe it, so it's true. But where I was confused was like, what I interpreted from that was I can just choose to believe anything and it will just be true. But you don't really have a choice about your inherent beliefs. You can say right now, I believe this, I believe in this, I believe in that. And that doesn't really mean anything because when then that thing fails, it feels right to you. You're like, yeah, well, of course it wasn't true. I just believed in it, whatever. It's not until you prove something to yourself in your own reality that you can really believe it.
Mm.
And once you prove these things to yourself and you really believe them, your reality will change. Everything will change. But just to share for lack of a better word, like a technique, for this stuff, is like you want to get in a state akin to sleep, right? So you're going to sleep, but you're not asleep yet. But you're not totally awake and chipper. You're like kind of in that in between phase. And when you're in this state akin to sleep, you're gonna imagine a scene, like a 5-10 second scene play out. And this scene is going to imply that you are what you want, what you're looking for, whatever. So just on a very materialistic level, as an example, say it was like a car. You're trying to manifest a car. You're going to get in this state akin to sleep, and you're just going to imagine this scene 5-10 minutes play over and over. Imagine like a friend or a relative or someone just looking at you with love, like, I can't believe you got the car. You did it. Whatever
Mhm.
whatever would be true in your reality, whatever really would happen that assumes that thing were true. Now, another confusing part is you don't have to do this forever. You can imagine this scene and just keep repeating it. Let it play out 5 to 10 minutes, whatever, until you just feel like you're done. And there are no other rules. Then you just go to bed and live your life. And you don't need to do anything else to make this thing happen. And it'll happen. Just try it.
Yeah.
And that's my best advice to people is try it. Do not listen to me. Do not listen to anyone else. Just try it. Assume the thing is true, live in the end, and go live your life.
And the thing I always think about that too is like, I mean, what a gift to give to yourself anyway, is like to take like 5 minutes to like fully enjoy a daydream of like what you ultimately want to have happen
Yeah.
without any attachment to like, I have to make this happen or anything. It's just like, oh, I'm just going to let myself like sit here and daydream for a few minutes. And just like love it and
Yeah.
then just let it go. It doesn't even have to be any harder than that.
Yeah. And that's then you just let it go. You
Yeah.
let it go and you live your life. We're programmed very much so that desires are bad. We're
Yes, we are.
very much programmed that you wanting anything is because you're selfish, you're narcissistic, you don't care about others. We're really taught this. It sounds crazy when I say it, but that's that's what everybody's taught. But in my opinion, desires are good. You're not gonna have a desire for something if it isn't good.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think that our desires are just like our higher dimensional aspects of ourselves being like, you can create something new this
Yeah,
way, this way. You
yes,
don't have to keep
exactly.
repeating the same shit over and over and over again.
And it's kind of like with those infinite timelines, you're just gonna gently and easily slide into this version of reality where you have this thing or you are this thing.
Yeah.
But the overarching point is that it's not as hard as you think, and you have everything in you. You don't need anything else. There's no savings of money. There's no job. There's no friend. Like, you don't need anything. You have it all. And that's something that kind of in my spiritual awakening really I don't know, just made me feel good. It made me feel comfortable when I was uncomfortable. And that's
Yeah.
kind of one of those concepts that I would want to scream at people and drill it into them. But obviously, of course, it had the opposite effect.
As it
They
does. As it does when we scream at people and try to
yeah,
drill things into them.
yeah, it doesn't work. Doesn't work at all.
Yeah. Oh, Ketsuban, this has been such a fantastic conversation. I feel like we have even more to cover, except that I have a reading starting in 15 minutes. But thank you so much for reaching out to me. Thank you so much for being willing to come and have this conversation that then I can share with everybody on the podcast. I feel like it was super beneficial and we covered a ton of ground. It was very enjoyable for me. So thank you. And so the wrong warp, I found it on, I just use iTunes or Apple Podcasts myself because I have an iPhone. But where else can it be found? And is there anywhere else that you want people to go to find you?
Can be Apple Podcasts, should be on Google Play. It's on iHeartRadio. Essentially all of the podcast apps.
Okay.
So I mean, really just search for it. There's no special particular one. I usually record the podcast live, so it's like the video aspect of it on Facebook.
Okay.
And that's something that if anybody's interested in that, send me a message on Instagram. My Instagram is a gateway drug, all one word. Gateway drug.
And I will include that in the show notes. And then it says too that you have a BitChute channel where you share.
Yeah, I just kind of started the other day because I was like, I need to have a video thing, but the BitChute's not that important. It's just that if you don't want to reach out to me on Instagram and get my Facebook information and add me on Facebook for that, just go to BitChute.
Okay, cool.
It just won't be live. But the important part is the audio version of the podcast.
Yeah, that's what I found. Cool. Well, thank you so much. I hope that this is just the first of many conversations because I feel like there are like tons and tons and tons of other rabbit holes that we could organically go down.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and we need to get you on my show and just
do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you everybody so much for listening. Thank you for your time and your attention and your listenership. And, the usual drill, if you are listening to this and you enjoy it and you want to send us some love, then take a screenshot of yourself listening and tag us on social media so we know you were listening. It makes us very happy, but only a very small handful of people ever do that, and it's fine. Otherwise, you can just DM or you can just quietly, privately listen. Either way, I love you and I'm so glad you're here. And I hope you have a great day or night wherever you are. Thank you so much for being here with me on this episode. I appreciate you more than my words could ever say. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share, and I will catch you on the next episode.